All right, the title of this one is Decentralization. And its question is can we have a peaceful revolution moving forward? I think it's a real big question. We just had a panel up here that was talking about elections and having independent candidates. And I think this is a nice next follow-up. It's a real question. We have a great group of panelists here. David or Stephen, if you want to say a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. So I'm an independent journalist. Came to Bitcoin several years ago after interviewing Roger Ver, Bitcoin Jesus, and then Trace Mayer on my podcast, got into it. Also run a news startup, Fulcrum News, Fulcrum.news. And thanks for having me. It's been a great time so far.
Aloha, I'm Joby Weeks, from Breckenridge, Colorado, I guess. I've been in Bitcoin since I can remember. I mean, we started with gold and silver. We started the mountain hours. We've been in these barter networks, and then when Bitcoin came around, I was pretty excited about that too. So since about 2011 probably, I learned about it from a bunch of you guys. Ron Paul, Ed Griffin, Pork Fest, all these events. This is kind of where the whole crypto anarchists and the blockchain disciples, gather, and so it's good to see all you all again.
Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Southern. I'm a YouTuber and a political commentator, and if you ask any of the mainstream media, Vice or Huffington Post, I'm part of the elusive, spooky far right, so watch out, got some dangerous opinions. And yeah, thanks for having me here, I really appreciate it.
Peter Schiff. The face of Bitcoin. We're also going to have Derek Rose join us. He's just finishing up his lecture in the other hall, and his is on decentralization. Lives his life that way, so we're excited to have him. I'm going to put it out there as a first question. Or maybe I'll start with you, because I know some of the stuff you've gone through here recently. You've put yourself out there, obviously, as an activist, and you're getting attacked by other activists. Give some feedback on that and what's been happening.
Oh boy, so I'm sure some of you guys have seen what's going on all over the streets of America. We've got free speech potentially or maybe not coming up. In a week at Berkeley, there have been people dressed in all black starting violent riots since the beginning of the election when Trump went in office. I was there in DC and I just turned around and windows of banks and businesses are being smashed all over the place, like that's somehow going to change the election results. And it escalated from there. It started with just attacking businesses, but since then, we literally have people dressing up like gladiators in the streets, fighting 1v1 ninjas in all black. If you guys haven't seen this, you gotta turn on your TV. Obviously, this has been going on in college campuses regarding issues of free speech. This has been going on regarding the election, Trump in office, any sort of issues. People are at each other's throats right now. And this is happening globally. I was just in Paris a few months ago. Riots in the streets there as well. The people are upset, and they're not sure who to be upset with. A lot of their problems are caused by the establishment. They're caused by the government. But unfortunately, right now, we are at each other's throats, and we are trying to attack each other instead of the people that are really causing these problems, which is the government. So they are winning right now, unfortunately. And my motto is, I am an optimist for myself, but a pessimist for the world. So I, unfortunately, on this panel, do not believe that the revolution will be peaceful, because I don't think the people in power want to give up free money and all that power that they have right now, and I don't think the people are doing a good job at calibrating themselves to go over and fight the right people. They are instead eternally in conflict with each other. So I am not hopeful that the revolution will be peaceful, but I'm excited to hear what others have to say.
I drove into Aspen on the radio as I was coming into Aspen Meadows, a street fighting man. And I thought about that as I just listened to Revolution. They were singing the chant and the song, and I thought, I heard of Bitcoin and it's just finance and this and that. I wasn't putting a lot of application to it. But obviously, I think that is out there. And, we talk about it as a potentially peaceful currency, a peaceful change. Can currency conversion be peaceful? I want to start with David over here talking about that.
Sure, yeah, so the peaceful versus non-peaceful thing, what I started to say before we started is, I think where the violence starts, where the negotiations break down between the establishment and between basically everybody at this conference, is when central banks and ATM machines and banks literally decide to say, okay, the market cap of crypto is so high and the participation rate is so high that we're not going to honor this anymore. We're not going to allow you to take money out of the ATM. We're not going to allow even our central banks to interact with your currencies. The People's Bank of China, that came from a lower tier bureaucrat, basically came just close to saying that, right? Like, your currencies are not valid. So what do you have here? I'm a very peaceful person. I'm not like starting a revolution, but you have bureaucrats thousands of miles away from me who have not been elected by me or by anybody I know, who over the course of a weekend cost me 20% of my value as a person in our financial system, right? In our cryptographic financial system. So to me, that's when the peace ends, and when we start getting real feisty is when they say, hey, your money's not money, and you can't use it to buy food. That's when I say, fuck you, your People's Bank of China is not a People's Bank. Satoshi gave us a People's Bank. So that's what I think.
I think the sooner we can build an army of people that are all like-minded and we all work with each other, we don't need their money anymore. We can do business with each other, and that's what I always kind of do when I'm looking to spend money is let's do business with people that do business with us. Let's create opportunities for people to make money so they don't have to chase Federal Reserve notes and all that. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity out there. My goal is when people are like financially independent, when people are healthy, and they have time freedom, and of course money, I like to say this, well, money doesn't buy you happiness, money buys you time, time buys you freedom, freedom buys you happiness. And people that are happy are usually healthy and financially independent, right? It's hard to be happy when you're sick and when you're broke and you're living paycheck to paycheck. So I try to meet them where they're at, create opportunities where they can earn passive residual income, teach them about natural cures like Ed Griffin writes in his book, The World Without Cancer and others, so that people don't want to have a violent revolution if they're rich and happy. It's only the poor people, right? So if we create opportunities for people everybody to be rich and healthy and happy, then you don't really have to worry about violence.
I want to bring Peter in this discussion. I've probably been asked this question more than any other question is, why is Peter Schiff getting asked to come to this conference? Well, and I just want to say one more thing on that lead up is, I personally am really glad he's here for a lot of reasons. And one of the things that I read the tribute that he gave to his dad when his dad passed away, and I just talked about it. It almost tears me up as I talk about it. And I mean, I think your legacy, regardless of what you think about Bitcoin or anything else, I mean, what your dad went through and what you obviously personally went through with that is, to me, when I think about the front line of finance and taxes, I mean, it's right there. And so I'm really glad you're here and you're representing that.
Thank you. Now, actually, before I even answer this question, I mean, this may seem a little weird, but I just want to clarify something. Specifically, what is the revolution that you're referring to?
Well, the revolution of that is, if money is to go away, or we are to change money, and we've all talked about this as Bitcoin. I know it's not your medium. We've talked about this as the change. Obviously, that's going to be a revolutionary change.
All right, so I don't think, I think what we're going to have in money, I think we're going to revert to a monetary system that works, right? I mean, for thousands of years, we had a monetary system based on gold. Gold was money, and there also were various currencies that existed that were backed by gold. These were called money substitutes, whether they were Deutschmarks or pound sterling or dollars. They circulated as money, but what gave them value was the gold that backed them up. So that's the monetary system that we were on for a long time. But the US led the world off a gold-based monetary system in 1971. Ever since then, we've had this fiat system where currencies are backed by nothing. But people still use them as if they were still backed by something, but they're not. And so I think the revolution that I see coming is that this experiment is going to fail. And I do think that there will be a revolt and we will go back to real money, whether individuals demand real money and use real money on their own, or whether governments make the change. But the revolution that I don't believe is going to succeed is the cryptocurrency. I don't think that cryptocurrencies are the solution to this problem. I don't think that they are going to succeed the way people believe. They're not going to function as money. They are functioning now as a highly speculative digital asset. There are a lot of people that have tremendous aspirations surrounding where these currencies might go. I think a lot of that greed is clouding people's judgment. I think a lot of times when you're trapped in a bubble, it's hard to know that you're in the bubble, especially when you're surrounded by so many other people that are in the same bubble as you. And I know too that when people look at it, when people are convinced that something, oh, Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million, you know, nobody wants to sell. Nobody wants to be the guy that got rid of his Bitcoin and missed out on all that wealth. I mean, people probably know exactly how many Bitcoins they have, and they probably multiply it by 1 million, and they start spending this money mentally, and they're there, and they're getting so excited about all this wealth. But I think this whole thing is going to end very badly. I think that this is going to collapse, not for the reason that Jamie Dimon says that, well, you know, the governments are going to kill it. They're not going to have to kill it. It's going to die of natural causes. Ironically, if the cryptocurrencies could succeed, the governments would kill it. And they can kill it very simply. They would simply ban it. They would outlaw it. They would say it was contraband. They would say that, you know, you use it, you go to jail for 20 years. You pay a $100,000 fine. No banks would accept it. No retailer would accept it. But I don't think they're going to have to do that, because it's not going to work. It's not going to compete with dollars or euros or pounds or yen. It's just going to exist until it implodes. And, you know, when that point is, maybe 5,000 was the peak. Maybe it's going to rally again. I don't know. But at some point, the bottom will drop out of that market, and it's just going to implode. Then it's going to be over. But the danger that I see, and it's going to be, you know, an irony, is that you know, governments are going to use this as another example of why capitalism doesn't work. About why government needs more power to protect us from things like investing in Bitcoin. Because, you know, people are going to lose money, and governments are going to react to that by passing new laws and find new ways to take away our rights. And I think it's actually going to make the fiat currencies look good in a way, because I think these cryptocurrencies will collapse before. And, you know, when I came to this conference that you guys asked me to come to, and what it reminds me of, even though it's on a much smaller scale, is when I went to the Mortgage Bankers Conference in Las Vegas in 2005 and 2006, where I went to an audience of 3,000 people, all mortgage bankers, to tell them that they were about to go out of business, that they were going to lose their jobs, that their companies were going to fail. And, you know, this was all the subprime lenders and subprime, and these guys were like high, you know, they had, you know, tigers in cages. I mean, they had spent so much money on this conference in Las Vegas. I mean, money everywhere, because they were making so much money in the mortgage business. And I was telling them that, hey, you guys are going to be out of business. This thing is a bubble. The market's going to implode. The subprime market's going to collapse. And I actually went there to try to get them to invest in the hedge fund that we had set up to short the subprime market. And out of 3,000 people that came to that conference, about 60 of them went to my workshop, because that was the deal. I said, I'll go to your conference, but you got to give me this workshop to promote the fund. I had one person invested. Everybody else just thought I was crazy to think that real estate prices can fall, that the real estate market, the mortgage market can implode. So I think, to me, this is the same thing. You've got a lot of people that believe in something that's not true. And part of the reason that people believe it is because the market has vindicated. One of the reasons that the real estate people thought I was so wrong was because real estate prices kept going up. And I had been renting my home for years, and supposedly I was missing out on all these gains, and I didn't know what I was talking about, because I was smart. I would own real estate just like they did. But I knew it was a bubble. And I think the same thing is here. I mean, people bought Bitcoins years ago, and yeah, they're a lot higher, and they think, well, they're right, they're smart, because they bought these things and they went up. It just means that other people made the same mistake, except they paid an even higher price than you did. But at some point, you know, the music stops, and and then if you still have your cryptos, that's it. And the last little advice I would say is, hey, take some profits. If I'm, even if you want to go out of this conference and you still think that this thing is going to the moon, okay, fine. You don't have to, sell half. You'll still get rich if you're right. But at least if I'm right, you won't lose it all.
Well, let's bring in Derek. Derek, you're living your life this way. Talk about being a decentralized person.
Yeah, so what he means by that is I'm a freelance journalist. I get paid in Bitcoin. I buy my flights in Bitcoin. My speaking fee here is in Bitcoin. I don't know why it would be otherwise. I've adopted the lifestyle. And for me, the reason is not just because trying to compete with the US dollar, because my personal beliefs are that this system is rigged from top to bottom, from the Federal Reserve System all the way through each level of the government. And I am seeking a revolution, or more of an evolution, but a revolution in the sense of completely rethinking everything that we do, from government to economics. And so I choose to adopt, whether it's Bitcoin or other cryptos, and other forms of decentralized living, trying to unplug from the state's economic system, trying to unplug from unsustainable food production systems, from the centralized education system, academia, all these different forms of centralized power where people benefit. I try to unplug, opt out, decentralize from that, and encourage other people to do the same. And it's provided a lot of value for me because, as Joby was saying about time, now that I've unplugged and decentralized my income, for example, instead of focusing on working at one place for 60 hours a week, being a journalist, doing that, a certain amount of hours a week, and then doing multiple different tasks, decentralizing my income and my lifestyle, gives me the time to educate myself, gives me the time to become more aware of what my options are, to increase the happiness in my life, to increase the freedom in my life, and then to encourage other people to do the same. So for me, I just need a medium of exchange that is not going to be benefiting people on top, centralizing power, whether that'll be crypto or something else, or Bitcoin. I always tell people Bitcoin's just the start. And they can try to ban it, but people like me who don't care, we're going to go to the next one. We're going to go, there's the technology's out, the idea's out, and there's already so many other options that if they do try to, say, what they're doing in China, if that starts happening everywhere, I fully believe, and I hope that more of you out here who are invested in crypto are not just using this as a way to make money or to pad your portfolio, that this has the potential to really truly be revolutionary, and you have to think in those terms. Stop playing by the government's rules when it comes to crypto. Otherwise, it will die. It will get stuck in a box if you play by those rules, if you play by Jamie Dimon's rules and by Janet Yellen's rules and by whatever puppet they put in the office's rules. We have to think in new terms and stop thinking in terms of what the state has given us.
Well said.
So I read Creature from Jekyll Island, then I followed into Ron Paul, helped you and Peter, started minting gold and silver coins. We made the Ron Paul coins, broke off to AOCS, made 100 different coins, minted over $100 million in gold and silver, and I was bugged. But I couldn't get anybody to spend gold and silver. They were putting it in their safe and burying it in the backyards. It's great money, it's an awful currency. So went on to figure out.
It's actually not an awful currency.
No one spends it. No one spends it. Think about it. If you took a bar of gold and tried to fly, a big bar like this, and tried to fly over to Europe and then down to Africa and over to Asia with a bar with you, at every customs, they'd steal it, they'd take it from you.
But you don't have to do that, right?
You can take $10 million on your phone now.
You can
convert it into gold. You can turn it into gold.
But I can take $10 million worth of gold on my phone too.
Why was gold money? Gold was money because it proved there was work that was done. Silver was done.
That's
you didn't have to trust people.
That's not why
it takes work. It takes work to make gold and silver.
But that's not why it was money. It's not because it requires resources to produce it. It's because once it's produced, it has real value. It has real utility.
So when you have a gold coin, okay, that coin, it took a while to dig it up out of the earth. You had to crush it in processors and crucibles, and you needed a furnace, and you had to have dyes to stamp out beautiful coins.
You got actual
so that's
gold.
Exactly, you got gold, and that's
and gold has value, it has uses.
Because work has been done.
No, not
you
because
don't have to trust anybody.
Yes, sir.
It's because it has.
It takes work. Can I get an agreement that it takes work to make a nice, beautiful silver coin or gold coin? It takes effort. right?
Yes, but now you have something real as a result.
Versus an IOU, a debt note, a piece of paper that promises maybe you'll do work, right? Maybe, so you have to trust that someone, if you get paid in an IOU, I'm gonna mow your lawn.
What does that have to do with Bitcoin?
Well, because it takes work to make Bitcoin.
Yes, but once you do all that work, you have nothing.
No, that's not true. You have Bitcoin.
You have Bitcoin is nothing.
Have you read Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper? Here it is. Here's his white paper.
Real money, it's nothing.
Bitcoin is a blockchain. That's what gives it value. The blockchain is what backs Bitcoin.
No, the blockchain is not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is
No, the
something
blockchain, it's for the first time in the world, we can now digitize an asset and set it across the internet without having to go through a trusted third
But
party.
Bitcoin is not an asset. You can do it with gold.
How can I send gold across the internet without going through a trusted third party? Huh? How can I send gold or silver or anything else
Yeah, you're gonna have
across the
you're gonna
internet
use it.
without?
You're
So
gonna
that's
use
what
a
I'm
third
saying.
party.
For the first
There's
time in
nothing
history,
wrong with using a third party.
for the first time in history, we can now send an asset, any asset.
Yeah, you can, yes. For the first time in
Send it
history,
here and apart across the
Yes.
internet without going through.
you can
trusted
send a
third
worthless
party.
asset anywhere you want.
Yes,
Fantastic. That's great.
You say worthless
asset.
You say worthless, I can turn Bitcoin into gold. Well, you think gold
Today
has
you
value?
can.
I can
Today
turn
you
Bitcoin,
can.
so it's not worthless. It's not worthless, is it? I can turn it into gold.
It has a market value today. It may not have any market value tomorrow because intrinsically, the Bitcoin has zero value. There's no utility. You can't.
There is total utility. I can take $100 million out of China
No.
and turn it into Bitcoin or turn it into real estate in Vancouver. Instantly, you can't do that with gold.
Yes, you can. Well,
Believe me, I was a
with
big
a
gold
third
and silver
party.
guy. No one in here is minting more gold than me.
Yes, it's
Well,
got
you don't understand money.
I told you guys the revolution would be peaceful. I have a question for you guys. What percentage of people actually own gold or Bitcoin?
I think you should own it all.
No,
Gold,
no, no, but
Bitcoin,
what
silver.
percentage of people, like of the population, of just the West, America, Canada, very small percentage. So when we talk about the idea of a revolution being peaceful or not, we're still talking about just these big ideas of Bitcoin, gold. We're not talking about the general populace, who are the people who are going to be affected by this currency collapse and the crisis that we're going to face in the future. And a lot of those people are not being convinced to trade in gold or Bitcoin right now. And while it's all fine and dandy to talk about these kind of dreams, I love Joby because he's just like, we'll just make everyone rich. It's like, it's the total opposite of socialism.
If you
It's
have
like,
a
we'll just
bank
make everyone poor.
If you live in a country that has the rule of the law, if you live in a country with a bank account, you've got, stocks, title to real estate, Bitcoin's not for you. It's not for you. It's for the 2 billion people out there that can't prove they exist. It's for the people that don't have titles to real estate. It's the 5 billion people that don't have bank accounts. Who gives a crap about Americans? You already have Venmo and PayPal. These are the guys that are getting stuck by Western Union and MoneyGram. I was just in the Philippines. They're paying 10, 15% to get their money back from Singapore, from Dubai, working around the world, getting shafted. Bitcoin is the solution. No, they cannot.
Have real money.
Bitcoin is not for you. It's for the people that can't even prove they exist. It's for the people that can't
Why
hold
should
titles to
What
real
happens
estate.
to local
It's for somebody like me who doesn't pay taxes, doesn't use a bank account, doesn't use a credit card, and just travel the country paying for all my gas with Bitcoin.
Cool.
That's who it's for, the people who want to be away from the system.
And that's for anybody.
Anybody can adopt it, but right now, it's valuable if you're not trying to be plugged in and really could care less about what the US dollar is doing. Or, as Joby was saying, people in other places that don't have an option to be able to transfer funds without exorbitant
5 billion people don't have bank accounts. With Bitcoin, they can have a wallet in 30 seconds. They can now do business with anyone anywhere in the world, instantaneously, very low fees. You can turn that Bitcoin into any currency you want, way faster than a bank. Have you guys ever sent a wire? It takes you $45 fee. It takes like 3 days.
Fees are not as low as you think, and they've been going up. So they
Oh,
make,
it's way cheaper than a $45 wire fee, and that takes 3 days. I can do 10,000 Bitcoin transactions in the same amount of time. So the velocity of money is speeding up.
But like I said, but I could use the internet to send my gold someplace too. It's the same thing, except I send something.
We have to use a third party.
There's nothing wrong with
Yeah, but I gotta
using
give
a
my
third
social
party.
security number.
People have been using third parties to store wealth for centuries. No, they're not all evil.
We want to cut out the middleman.
David, come on.
And every time you do business, you're doing business with a third party.
So
That's not true.
I think the gold bugs fear of cryptography and cryptocurrency, not just Schiff's in particular, any gold bug's fear of crypto, I think. I was on the last panel in here, I wasn't on it, I was sitting in it, Jesse Ventura and Sinich, and one of you guys suggested that the blockchain, aside from currency, where one of its top uses right now will be get us a more credible voting system, right, where we know that our vote actually counted for something. And Ventura kind of exploded with the guy. He's like, I don't trust computers to take away what the paper ballot is. Some things can't be improved upon. Paper is good because you can always recount, and because it's decentralized, right? You have these individual counties add the ballots up. If there's a problem, you recount the paper that's in that box. So cryptography does a very similar thing. At scale, if there's a problem, you can recount the paper, right? That's what the blockchain gives us, is accountability. And in my vision of history, human beings did not come across gold and make that currency or make that the base layer of currency for 6,000 years because it has any special properties, just because it is provably rare and because you can work to mine it, as he says. And that is literally it, because currency is a human cultural object. Show a fucking Bitcoin or a gold coin to a dolphin, arguably a brain structure as complex as ours, if not more. It has no interest. It just lets the gold coin fall to the ocean floor and it continues doing its thing. This is a part of human culture. Currency is a social network. Cryptocurrency won't drop to zero. It'll go above $1 trillion.
Well, yeah. I don't fear Bitcoin at all, or any cryptocurrency. I mean, but for you to say that gold didn't have any special properties that enabled it to succeed as money relative to other commodities that have been used as money, just shows that you know nothing about money. You know nothing about gold. To think that it doesn't have properties, the properties that gold has that enable it to serve as money are properties that other commodities don't have. I mean, what are they? Well, all right, let's say I wanted to use cattle as money. I mean, the properties that gold have, and obviously Bitcoin tries to replicate them, because if I have an ounce of gold, every ounce of gold is exactly the same. I can take my ounce of gold and I can melt it down and I can make it into smaller quantities, right? And I can take my gold and put it in the ground and dig it up 100 years later and it's still there.
How do you verify it's actually on the periodic table as gold?
So, gold can be shaped, it can be hammered into, it's spread. I mean, it's a very useful metal that has properties that other metals don't have. But apart from that, it's very desirable as a luxury good. It's in ornamentation in your home, in jewelry. I mean, it's been valued as a wealthy luxury good for centuries, for thousands of years. It was a commodity before it became money. Money wasn't. We used to have a barter system. Money was an invention by man. Man invented money, and it made us more productive. It enabled lending and savings and finance and insurance. It was a huge leap forward for mankind to not have to, if you made chairs and you wanted, a pair of shoes, to have to find a guy that made shoes that wanted my chair, that was a lot of work. When people found that you could use money, but the thing about money is money must also be a commodity of value. When you exchange money for a good, the person who gets the money has to get something that's really valuable too, even if he doesn't use it. So if I pay somebody in gold, even if they don't melt that gold down and make it into a necklace, the fact that they're going to turn around and use it to buy something else, they still got that real commodity. They still got a valuable, thing in exchange for whatever they gave me. And that is the basis of money. All money has to have that value in and of itself. It can't simply exist as a medium of exchange. Now, governments have been able to pull that off for a while because they were able to fool people. Because people were using dollars that were backed by gold for so long that they forgot that they were using gold. They thought they were using dollars. All the prices were in dollars. All the contracts were in dollars. They weren't in gold. And so when the government severed the relationship between gold, so people continued to use the currency. And of course, it's taxes. You have to pay your taxes in dollars. So, if you don't want to go to jail, right, you got to have dollars. All the local, your property taxes are in dollars. You have to send the state dollars. So everybody needs dollars because everybody has to pay taxes. So there is a demand for it. But to say that gold didn't have these qualities is ridiculous. But people think, oh, well, we'll just use cryptocurrencies. We'll just use Bitcoin because fiat currencies have no value, so we could just use Bitcoin because it has no value. It's not going to work.
They do have value.
Okay, so, yeah, I got a question. Wait, wait, wait.
But you
You can transfer assets across the
yes, and there's 1,000 digital currencies that do exactly the same thing, and there could be 100,000, and Bitcoin,
Platinum's pretty.
Okay,
Platinum can be traded.
I want to,
Can I share something with you? Would you say that has value?
it doesn't have intrinsic value, but it has a
Okay,
value in the
you
market.
can say this has value, right? So if I buy Bitcoin with this, and then I take my Bitcoin and I buy gold, you're telling me that Bitcoin isn't worth anything?
No, it has a market value in that somebody will give you something for it, but they may not, because it's all based on confidence. The only person who's going to take your Bitcoin is if they think somebody else is going to want it in the future. But that's the change, so you bump and walk.
Because we took a real tangible
No.
asset and bought it with it.
Yeah, just because you
It takes
want something doesn't
electricity
mean
to
it's
make
going to hold its
Bitcoin. It
value.
takes electricity to make Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a waste of
okay, let's,
electricity.
I'm going to cut it off right here. Let's talk about decentralization as a peaceful revolution. I want to get back to this question because I think this is important. Peter obviously brings up, I think the thing we're getting here as a question is, we know that we can mine Bitcoin, we know we can mine gold. There's a similar quality here.
You're not really mining, you're just solving a math problem. They called it mining to make it sound like gold.
Okay,
Because it's a
fair enough. I think
But
what
there's no mining, you don't have a pick, you don't have
Many people, okay, I want to get back to the question again though, because many people that started with Bitcoin came from gold, they came from gold and silver. So the question I guess I have, in the system you talked about, one of the challenges that anybody who talks about gold or silver, you said, well, I think it will revert back to this. I think there'll be a collapse and we'll revert back to this. I want to get back to that bridge. What is the bridge? Is it a revolution?
Well, look, there's a market. I mean, look, people use FedEx, right? I mean, they used to use the post office and they started using FedEx because FedEx was better than a government product. People are using Uber now instead of government licensed taxis. So I do believe that when the public has a choice, right? If they have a choice between using the government's version of money, which is a fiat currency that is going to constantly lose value by design, right? It's going to lose value every year, it's going to lose purchasing power, and it's potentially, it can collapse and lose all of its purchasing power, depending if the governments print too much of it, and then people lose confidence in it. But I think if the free market provides a better alternative, then I think people will use it voluntarily. I think gold is a better alternative. I think with the internet today and with the ability to transact in gold electronically using the internet, I think more and more people will start to realize that it's very efficient and very easy to use gold in commerce. It's just as easy as using dollars or pounds or yen. But I don't think it's going to be the cryptocurrencies because I don't think they're going to work. Because I think the price is going to implode and then people are going to lose too much and it's not going to be there because it's not going to be a store of value. And you can't have a money that doesn't have a reliable store of value. If you can't put money aside and be confident, and you can't have, price things in a currency where you have no idea where it's going to be. I mean,
Well, how do we go from a paper dollar to a gold dollar? What's in between then?
well, I mean,
That's to me, that's right back.
well,
to that
eventually,
question.
I do think that the governments, again, will back their currency by gold, which is what currency needs to be backed by. It can't just be backed by nothing. It has to be backed by something, and generally gold is what they do. And most central banks have gold. A lot of central banks have been accumulating more gold. I think central banks.
Can you prove that state? Can you prove that work? Can you go there and prove that gold's there to us right now?
I mean, our gold is Fort Knox?
Yeah.
Well,
We'll
well,
go
we
right
know.
now if you can show it.
Well, obviously, I've never been there, but a lot of the world's central banks own gold, claim to own gold. They have gold reserves, and they've been buyers of gold. So I think the world is preparing once again, because right now, the main reserve currency is the dollar. And, we're now the world's largest debtor nation. We're not the creditor nation that we used to be. When we became the world's reserve currency, we have 20 trillion in debt, and they're about to get rid of the ceiling so they can really crank it up. And you can start to see the world trying to move away from the dollar. And when the dollar does crash, I think that they're gonna have to back their currencies by something real. And so I think central banks are prepared to back their currencies by gold. But even if governments don't go on a gold standard, then people can do it by themselves. And people can use modern technology to go back on the gold standard. They don't have to wait for the government to do anyone themselves. But I think these cryptocurrencies, unfortunately, are just going to be a sideshow, because I think a lot of people that should be buying.
You should read the white paper.
So we should trust central bankers. I'm in my libertarian.
All right, I'll read it tonight.
All right. He's a brilliant guy. He's nominated for the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, who?
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Okay, well, what does he look like? Who is this guy? Exactly, that's why it's worth. Can I meet him and shake his hand and talk to him?
Yeah, I'm
When he accepts his fraud, we're all right?
I am in my libertarian book club nightmare right now. Like, I knew when I agreed to go to this.
Do you have to go like this when you talk about
circle jerk of arguing about gold or Bitcoin and the non-aggression principle. Well, the world is going on around us, you know? And the reality is, I love Bitcoin. I love gold. You guys are great. But the reality is, there are probably more people on welfare in America than people who own gold or Bitcoin. And how are we going to deal with this issue when, yes, Uber is better than the government, but what money are they spending grabbing that Uber? Money that they're getting from the government in loans, and there are literally so many people don't want to work anymore. The government are importing people that don't want to work anymore. There's a 10 to 15% populace that are literally incapable of working within our current system that isn't talked about very often by people who have IQs below a point of being able to even do menial jobs. So when we talk about we're going to have gold and Bitcoin and everyone's going to just work and it's going to be great, well, it's a bit, I mean, I love that idea, but it's a bit utopian in our current state. What if people don't want to work? It's going to be violent if we switch currencies and ours goes into crisis and collapses and people don't want to work. People don't want to get Bitcoin. They don't have Bitcoin. They don't have that wealth. So there's a reality going on around us right now outside of this world of debating whether Bitcoin or gold is better. And those people are going to have a lot more problems than just buy some Bitcoin.
I think that, outside of taking Republican conservative talking points about welfare, that we got to think bigger than that. We have to think about the technology. That, there are people who don't want to work. There's a lot of people on welfare. She's right. There's more people probably on welfare than who have adopted cryptocurrency, and that these conferences and things do tend to be circle jerks and ego patting and things of that sort. So I do think it's important to think bigger than that. Personally, I feel like that's what is up to each of us, though we're here, whether you're on the gold or crypto side, talking about revolution, will it be peaceful? It will probably be tumultuous. There will be a period, a transition period, if the economy collapses. But it really depends on everybody in this room and everybody who's paying attention to this sort of movement towards a more decentralized lifestyle. Because again, I feel like some people come to these things, but are we really changing, all the different aspects of our lives? Like, how much are we contributing to the problems that we see? If you're still using Federal Reserve notes, then you're a part of the problem, whether we like to admit it or not. So we have to think about our own actions, think holistically in terms of what are we doing to contribute to these problems? Are we actually reaching out to people to try to communicate to them to understand the value of taking care of themselves, the value of self-governance, the value of not relying on the state, and all these kind of things? Because otherwise we're just bitching on the sidelines and, again, circle jerking rather than living the philosophies that we're talking about. And that's what I hope to encourage you guys to do. And finally, on that thing, I encourage you to invest in seeds, because when it comes down to it, I can't beat gold or Bitcoin.
Gold has an actual value.
When it comes down to it, if my neighbor doesn't have anything to melt that gold down with, that gold bar is going to be useless to them. But if I have a bunch of seeds and tools, yeah, paperweight, that'll do good when we're starving to death.
Along with Bitcoin comes decentralization, and Mr. Schiff, I realize that you're not a crypto fan. I understand that, but you are a big fan of third party. And I'm just wondering, as a consumer, speaking for the majority of people in America, how well that third-party control is working for the average individual in this country.
Well, I mean,
that centralized third-party network.
I know, the idea is, okay, we can get rid of the third party and we can just, exchange peer-to-peer, but you're exchanging nothing peer-to-peer. That's the problem. You found a solution, but then you created a bigger problem in your solution, because what you're adopting as a medium of exchange is not going to store its value. And so if it collapses in price between the time you
Why
acquire
hasn't
it.
it collapsed yet, 8 years in? What's preventing
Well,
it?
How do you exchange gold peer-to-peer? How do you exchange gold?
Are its
third-party,
features
peer-to-peer?
its value?
No, the only way that if I want to exchange gold to you, I have to hand it, without a third party, I have to hand it to you, right?
How do you
I can give
verify
my
it?
gold.
Verifiability.
It's just like I can give you paper money. I can give you an ounce of gold, right? I can just hand it to you and then you'll have it, right? I can exchange it to you.
You
Like
can
if
send
I
it
want-
faster than Bitcoin. I can hand someone a bar of gold
Yeah.
across the world with Bitcoin instantly.
Well, I can do the same thing with gold, except I can transfer my ownership. I can transfer my gold
So
to
you have to
somebody
use the
across the
third
world.
party.
Well, I have to have the gold stored somewhere.
Right.
Right, I have to
Same
store
one,
it.
you don't have to use.
What happened?
I know, but at least, yes, because Bitcoin is nothing. But if you're gonna transfer something of real value around the world instantly, then you need a third party. If you want to transfer nothing around the world, then you don't need a third party. But you're not gonna do
Does
it.
Visa have value?
Visa is a credit card.
Visa.
Does
has
Dropbox,
value,
does
doesn't it?
Dropbox have
it's-
value?
Visa has a $100 billion valuation.
That's because it's a profitable company. The valuation is based on the profit.
Does Dropbox have value? Does Dropbox or AWS have value? Because there are tokenized blockchain tokens whose value is that they make distributed file storage possible. And if they can do that more efficiently than Dropbox, their token is of value. You can't
The token,
for
the
storage.
tokens doesn't, just because the company has value, doesn't mean that tokens that they
If the
issue
token
have value.
represents your right to cash it in for file storage, then it has value.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like, well, in that case, it's just like frequent flyer mileage.
But
It has value.
blockchain
I mean, but
gives
it's
us
not,
the
but it has
technology.
to, if it's linked to something, well, look, McDonald's could launch a cryptocurrency that's backed by a Big Mac, right? And
Did.
as long as you can exchange it to buy, and then it would have real value, because you can go any
But
McDonald's and you can get a Big Mac for your
opens up
Mac coin.
your disk capacity that might be a little overpriced.
Let's, you have a question over here, sorry.
I just wanted to make a small comment since this whole thing sort of, I guess, kind of opened up. But I think sort of the point is kind of being missed. We're all touching upon like characteristics of Bitcoin, other blockchain technologies. And I think the real point is that what blockchain does is it commoditizes trust the way third parties have taken advantage of people over the past hundreds of years. So if you look at the entire history of the world, it's all about people who can move assets. And eventually the Venetians said, listen, we need a way to track assets, so they created the credit debit system. And then you have institutions like government, schools, and businesses who have taken advantage of the fact that we can't trust each other to deliver a service or a payment or education. And so they've said, listen, you can place your trust in us so that we can deliver it to you. And that's exactly what's happened. And that's simply because the databases are siloed, we can't trust each other. What blockchain does is it decentralizes the information so that we can all see all transactions, and as such, we can trust each other again to deliver services such as education, so we can all verify each other's intelligence.
But just because you hire a company doesn't mean that company is going to screw you over. I mean, you're a company. If I hire somebody to store my gold,
That's not.
no, how about that? Well, if you're talking about for gold money, if I'm hiring Brinks to store my gold, and if they've been in business for 160 years, reliably storing gold
Peter,
for
the most
people,
valuable
why would
thing
that
is
stop?
identity. The most valuable thing is identity, and 143 million of us just lost our identity, and we're not even paying that fucking company. We're their product. We're their product, and we didn't opt in to be their
Does
product.
M-Pesa have value?
Huh?
M-Pesa.
What is it?
Cell phone minutes.
In Kenya, they're ahead of the curve on.
Well, look, if there's a currency that's actually used as cell phone minutes, and then it doesn't fluctuate in price like Bitcoin, it's worth exactly the same every day because it's simply the value of being able to be used yourself. Yes, if you can take something of real value and digitize it into a token, it can have value to the extent that it's actually backed by something. Like I said, if United Airlines wants to take their frequent flyer mileage and turn it into a cryptocurrency, and so now you have United Coin, they can do it. The only problem is, what if they say, well, now you need 40,000 miles to buy a ticket, or 50,000? Can you try it? But they can do that.
Mr. Cotter.
But you can't have these things that have absolutely no real value whatsoever, like a Bitcoin, and just say that that's going to be currency or money when it has.
Okay, I should ask, okay, we're really getting into the money thing here. I want to just bring this back about decentralization. And again, we brought Derek in here, we brought Lauren in here to talk about some things here. I want to ask this question. If a lot of derricks start going out of the system, getting out of the system. Is that revolution? What happens, what does the system do to a lot of derricks?
Shoot him.
Okay. You want to get into this?
Oh boy, I'm just extremely entertained. I lied. I think the revolution might not be violent at all. You might just convince everyone who disagrees with you to just kill themselves after all the right things. We'll just be you guys left.
For once, you didn't start the
No,
problem.
I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. I'm so excited. I was going to be on a panel where we weren't going to talk about the NAP or crypto the whole time, and you guys pranked me.
Well, I'd like to address your statements as far as how do we solve the more people on welfare problem. I think welfare is a result of the control of incentives that government represents. When you have economic control of an area and you cut off the bottom rungs through regulation, taxation, and inflation, you incentivize other means of making money. And then if you also outlaw peaceful means of making money, which is the war on drugs, in those areas where that would be incentivized, then you are incentivizing crime or you're incentivizing the welfare state. So I think it's that in control of the incentives and replacing them or competing with them. So maybe enough outreach for these alternatives has been done in those areas.
So this is the thing. I just recently made a video called "The Problem with Libertarianism," and I had to change it to "The Problem with Libertarians" because the reality is I love the ideology. It's perfect. It's an amazing ideology, anarchy, all of it. The problem is we've got a lot of people who will talk about, like, yeah, if we get rid of welfare, then people will be able to work. If we get rid of the government, then people will be able to do this.
Why didn't say get rid of welfare? I said compete
But
with it.
the problem is, will it happen? Will it be violent? That's the question.
Right, that's
How
the
do we do that?
Well, right, so I'm saying if you have competition, I don't think that addressed my point. I don't think that addressed my point. I said if we compete with the incentives, because government has control of those incentives and is driving the incentives towards illegitimate means.
You think the government will let you compete with them?
Well, we don't have to have the permission. That's what this is the whole crypto thing is
Well,
about.
no, they'll find a way.
Just ask Peter's dad.
So wait, that strikes me as very nihilist. That means
Like
no
I
hope
said,
the
I'm a
government
pessimist
is
for the world,
God.
I'm myself.
The problem, though, that all the people who live off the government are gonna run into, right? Because the government is able to print money and pay welfare benefits and food stamps and social security or just whatever we have. But if we do have a currency crisis, a dollar crisis, then those payments are gonna have little value in terms of purchasing power.
Right.
And that's when you might see some violence, because I do think that, we've got a culture now of entitlement. We have a lot of people that think they're owed something from the government, they think they're entitled to everything, they don't have to work, and they expect to get taken care of, and when all of a sudden their welfare checks don't buy anything. And I could even see a point where there's, if we do get a massive inflation due to a dollar crisis, they're probably going to impose price controls anyway, and so even if they had money, there's going to be nothing available to buy. And to the extent that merchants do have things to sell, they'll probably be selling it on the black market because they're not going to want to accept rapidly depreciating dollars in exchange for their scarce merchandise. So when that ultimately happens, we could see some violence. Not maybe the kind of thinking, but just when all of a sudden all that free money stops coming, and then there are people going to be looking, to blame. Who they're going to blame for all this?
Well, Derek brought up seeds. I sort of say that's one of the hard parts is how many people are self-sustainable anymore?
Well, definitely as far as, Warren's pointing to just the niche that this movement is, and that's the truth of it, that whether you're talking about libertarianism or the crypto community, it is a niche, and I say this with respect to the organizers of this event and other events like this, but perhaps that's because we're in Aspen with a conference that costs several $100s to get into and fly to, because the people who need these things can't afford to be here, they can't, they're working, if they're trying to survive, maybe they get welfare and they're working because they're trying to make ends meet or what have you. But typically the people who, I think, the people, the poor of the world who we're talking about benefit from crypto, they're not here. They're not here at this conference.
The blockchain is the way to bring them.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. It's our job to do the outreach. That's what I'm trying to point at, is because the people who really need it aren't here. And I say that as somebody who got paid to come here and speak. Obviously I'm here, but I go home knowing the people that I live in Houston, the poor communities that I'm surrounded by that have no idea about Bitcoin, is because the events aren't geared towards them and because the audience isn't reaching to them. And so how many of you are actually doing any outreach and getting outside of your own communities to go talk to them? And there's a lot of good people who are doing that work, but that's where I think that the work needs to happen if you ever want it to grow beyond a niche movement and to be the thing that we believe it really could be. Because You know, I live in the east end of Houston where probably there is a lot of people, welfare recipients. There's our old Hispanic and Black communities who could benefit from being off the Federal Reserve note. And I've been doing my efforts to preach to them and get the immigrant communities in Houston to understand, don't adopt the Federal Reserve note. They see that as, you know, oh, now I'm official, I've got my documentation, I'm using dollars. I'm trying to get them to see the opposite, to work outside of the system and to use things like crypto to create value and to maintain the value in their community. So if we want it to grow, if we want it to be less violent, or maybe even possibly peaceful, then a lot more outreach is needed and not just in our own circles.
For example, this is a Nexus company. When you invest in Nexus, you are investing in Vector. Vector is going to shoot satellites up to beam free internet and free blockchain down to everybody. I think we can all agree that the internet has been a huge financial boon to a lot of people who didn't have access to that. So that's one solution right there. If you invest in Nexus, you can free the world from it, possibly banks.
A solution is to go back to our communities and to actually host roundtables ourselves, have pizza parties, invite single moms over, teach them about how to secure it. I do this. Teach them how to secure their crypto. If they watch a video, and prove to me they watch the video, I send them $50. Once they send me a wallet, I send them $50 of crypto. And like start getting adoption going, right?
Yeah, this is, I want to,
we can all do.
and has been doing for a long time. There's a lot of people that's been doing this, but I want to ask Peter this one thing, and this is, and it's so obvious to me, and I'm wondering why. Tim and I, he's a financial planner in Scottsdale. We have gold money accounts, okay? We've invested in doing, trying to move it around. Well, I'm still waiting on my MasterCard, and I wanted, I get the money back. I can file in this, but it's all this third-party stuff. So when you use a Visa, I'm paying 4 point whatever, 3 point whatever, 2 point whatever % for the features of the ease of that. I am paying percentages to PayPal. I'm paying percentages. And I have to ask, does the features of cryptocurrency have any value? It's those features. It's how much gold and silver am I willing to put up for those features. Those features have value. It's the only thing that gives, Visa, its value, because it takes my money to do it. And crypto is a small, I just got that one question.
Well,
does its
when
features have value?
The features themselves, any value that the features have do not inure to the cryptocurrencies that are going to utilize those features. But
why not?
When I use a Visa card, not a gold money one, a regular Visa card, it doesn't cost me anything. In fact, I get frequent flyer miles, so it costs me nothing to use my Visa card. It's actually cheaper for me to use my Visa card than it is to pay cash, which is one of the reasons I use the Visa card. But let me finish. Now the merchants, no, wait a minute. The merchants pay a fee to Visa. Right, the merchant. Now, obviously, you can say, well, the merchants are going to add that into.
Damn, Skippy! I was a restaurant owner. That's exactly what I did.
Right, but the merchants do that because it's more efficient for their businesses to run that way, and so that's another cost of doing business. Just like I have to pay their when I go to a restaurant, I pay for the salaries, I pay for the food, I pay for everything, and then the small part that's built in there is a little bit of cost that extra for using the credit card. I mean, it's not a big part of the cost of the business. But what makes Visa have its value is Visa's a business. Visa earns money. It's a project. You can go buy stock in Visa if you want to own Visa. But Visa is a business that generates income for its shareholders. Bitcoin doesn't generate any income for the owners. If you own a Bitcoin, you But also, let me finish. The miners, it is not free to use Bitcoin. There is a cost, there is a time, the transactions take time, and there is a fee. The miners have to do this, they're getting paid. It is not free.
In 2010, $10,000 invested in gold is worth $9,000 today. And $10,000 invested in Bitcoin is worth $120 million today. You should find out why it's worth $120 million.
Because a bunch of fools
bought blockchain. You don't understand.
No.
Do you understand blockchain?
I do understand the blockchain.
Does that produce a value?
No, it doesn't give
All right. We're pulling up.
Visa makes money because it generates income. There's been no income generated by Bitcoin.
I mean, one more question. One more question, and we gotta wrap this up. Okay, go.
I'm actually here because of you guys. I am in real estate, been here almost 20 years in real estate, and I studied you in 05 and 06. And I took the advice that you gave me via the internet and applied it to my client base at the time when my banking friends were saying, it's amazing, we have money falling from the sky. And I'm like, this is a house of cards. Now, I'm not saying crypto is a house of cards. Joby, I think you're amazing. I don't think it's a house of cards. I think that we need to be careful. And the reason I say we need to be careful is I took your advice and I applied it to my lender friends and my broker friends, associates, close to us. And each one of us had about 200 or so clients at the time. Not one went into foreclosure. Because in 05 and 06, we got them out of variable interest. We got them out of ARMs. We got them out of houses they couldn't afford. We got them out of things that they were upside down. And we saved families. And the way you save families is in education. So you guys can hammer, hammer, hammer. It's amazing, money's falling from the sky right now. True. And it might continue, but it might not. And we have a very wise guy here who helped me save hundreds of thousands of families through proliferation and advice. So listen, and don't be so quick to judge someone who has a little history in their wisdom. There's a lot to be heard from this guy. Pay attention.
Yeah, no, we all love Peter.
All right, we're getting out of time. I know everyone has a lot of questions, and this is a provocative subject. So I want to thank our panel for coming here, and thank everybody for asking questions.
I'm going to continue the discussion at 3 o'clock over there. You guys want to come?